I believe there comes a time. Anyway, Pat Benatar just fired up, just finished on Whiskey Whisper Radio. Hey, and what I decided to do here was, well, the plan was to pour 1.5 ounces of each whiskey. So I've got my Jameson glass, pours exactly 1.5 ounces. However, I had two barrel strength whiskeys, cask strength whiskeys, I guess. So I wanted to not necessarily see which one is better, but just kind of compare differences from two different distillers, vision, let's just say. So I had just a little bit of this one left, the Jack Daniel's single barrel proof Tennessee whiskey. It is 109.9 proof. It is wow, I can't even read that. 64.95%. Let me show you that bottle clear one more time. Then I also had, let me show you that whiskey here, because there's a clear difference in visual between the two, and I'll point that out to you. Let you take a look at that. Now that's the Jack Daniels. But I also picked up this, and oddly enough, they run about the same price. The J. Riegers. This is a Lucas Liquor store pick, by the way. It is their bourbon. There we go. I'm trying to find. Okay. Keenan Cabernet barrel finished straight bourbon whiskey. It is 60.7%. So it's a little bit less, but not a lot. Now, I'll show you the difference. And I'm guessing that color came from the Cabernet barrel. But let me show you this whiskey. See how much darker that is. And I'm going to put them side by side here so you could really tell the difference. It almost has a brandy-like look to it, right? Or cognac-like look. Let me take that down because I'm really nervous that's going to fall, man. I'm terrified. Let me put that Jack Daniels bottle back up. I'm not as worried about it because it's empty. Yeah, I picked that up in Kansas City back towards the end of September when my wife and I were up there for our 25th anniversary. And I didn't pop it up until a couple weeks ago. I'm just kind of hanging on to it, and then I've just had a little bit here and there. It's not one. I mean, what I poured here. So again, the intention was to pour about 1.5 ounces of each. However, after I poured 1.5 ounces of this, there was a tiny bit left. So I went ahead and poured the rest of it out, and probably went to about 2 shots. So I poured just a little bit of this, so we had roughly the same amount of whiskey in both. And I want to be clear, I'm not necessarily looking for the word better, right? I'm not trying to find which one's better than the other. I don't like to use that word very often because to me the word better implies quality. And most folks, when they use the word better, all they're talking about is they prefer one to another. They prefer certain tastes of one thing to the other. But it doesn't necessarily mean it is better. That's just how they feel it. So I really hate to use that word unless quality is, it is clear that one is a better quality than another. But here we have, I mean, we've got a big distiller. We got Jack Daniels, and here I have a small craft distiller in J. Rieger's. And I'll be honest with you, right at this particular moment in time, my two favorite distillers are small craft distillers in Kansas City. One is J. Rieger's, the other one is Tomstown. I'm just in love with both of their products at this particular moment in time. So, nose is very woody, very oaky. I actually feel like I'm getting a lot of dark fruit here. I'm going to say toffee more so than caramel. You certainly get some toffee. There's vanilla is in there. There's some spice notes, but they're not up in the forefront. I will say right off the top, I noticed that the J. Riggers is much more aromatic, and some of that could be due to the Cabernet finish. Get a lot of different fruit aromas, mostly dark fruit. But also feel some stone fruit in there as well. Mentioned toffee over here, but here I'm getting a lot of deep, dark molasses, like a very dark brown sugar that mixes with those fruit notes. In particular, I feel like I'm getting like a candied dark cherry. I feel like the nose on the J. Riegers is much more complex, but again, a lot of that could be due to the Cabernet finish. And spice notes, yeah, it does possess some spice notes, but again, much like the Jack Daniels, they are it's a supporting player. So I'm going to set that one down. I'm going to take a drink of this one here. I mentioned the oaky notes here, and one thing, as I picked this back up before I took a drink, I remembered I wasn't. Although you do feel some oaky notes here, you do feel the oak for sure. I'm actually feeling more prevalence in the Jack Daniels on the nose anyway. I wasn't realizing at the time that I was buying a store pick, or I probably would have bought 2 bottles since we were just there on vacation and I wasn't going to be back up there for a while. I kind of wish now I did. Because I did have that, that vacation money, stuff I'd put aside to spend there. So I wish I'd have bought the 2, but I didn't. So I mentioned the spice notes on the nose. I'm going to take another drink and describe some flavors to you. So I want to talk about the fruit first. You get a lot of fruit flavors that you might not expect. I mentioned dark fruit on the nose, but it does get a little more complex on the flavors. You do feel some dark fruit. You're probably going to get some date, possibly some fig. You might even feel some raisin. But oddly enough, I actually feel golden raisin more so than a dark raisin. And I also feel like I mentioned the dark cherry on the nose here. Here you really feel a dark cherry in the flavor, especially right near the end. Almost like a sour cherry note. Whereas here I was feeling candied cherry or candied dark cherry on the nose. Here I'm feeling a sour dark cherry in the finish. Spice notes, cinnamon. You might feel some cloves, some nutmeg, some allspice. I also feel like I'm getting just a hint of cayenne because it does get spicy at the finish, which is very nice. The oak comes back to get you right at the end too. Nice, dry, very woody, right in the finish. It's a nice whiskey. Again, it is. I mean, there's a lot of proof happening here, right? So you are going to feel some alcohol. But if you were watching me there, I mean, it is very easy to drink. 64.95% alcohol. I'm going to set that off to the side for a second. Always worry myself when I change props here, especially since this one is a full bottle, and that is tilting just a touch, man. That's making me just nervous as all hell. Anyway. Keenan Cabernet Barrel Finish Straight Bourbon Whiskey, 60.7. So I didn't realize I was buying a bourbon either, because typically J. Rieger's is our Kansas City whiskey. So I didn't realize I was buying the straight bourbon. I was just trying to find mostly stuff that I know I couldn't get back here in Springfield. I know Scotch drinkers hate it when you use this word, but I'm going to use it smooth. And what smooth typically means for me anyway is that it's just easy to drink. And you can go through 100 adjectives to describe something. I could use all kinds of words here, but sometimes it's the simplest word that fits the best. And in this case, it's smooth. It just tastes good. It's easy to drink, but smooth not only implies flavor or not only works for flavor, it's also about the texture, the mouthfeel. It encompasses everything, and that's why I use the word smooth here. Mm. Now I mentioned the fruit flavor, the fruit aromas. You get a lot of dark fruit, but you also get a stone fruit. I'm feeling some nectarine, some apricot mixed in with all those dark fruit notes. Date. raisin, and I also feel like a very dark, overripe plum. The spice notes are interesting. Comes at you in a different way than the Jack Daniels. Where the Jack Daniels, it's very bold and blatant. The finish, you really feel those oak notes, both from well the bourbon barrel and the Cabernet wood. You really feel that, but the spice notes sort of sneak up on you after that's gone. Is when those spice notes kind of hit you. I'm gonna take another drink and describe some of those notes. I'm going to say primarily cinnamon. However, yeah, again, like the Jack Daniels, just the slightest notion of cayenne, but also some allspice in a great big way. You might feel it in a way of nutmeg and or clove as well. I won't say one is spicier than the other because they come at you in different ways. Whereas again on the Jack Daniels, it is blatant and up in your face and then fades. It just kind of creeps up on you on the J Rieger where it starts. It's like a like the Who's down in Whoville. It starts low and then starts to grow. Very interesting. So I'm going to change props again. Jack Daniels single barrel proof. Actually, I thought this was a single barrel, the J Riegers. But I think I read that wrong because it doesn't necessarily say. I just assumed by the proof it was, and I thought I read single barrel, but here it does. It just says Cabernet finish. But they are very similar in proof, although the Jack Daniels is slightly higher. 64.95. This private stock here is 60.7. So certainly high enough to be barrel strength, but on the lower end, I suppose. So let's pick up that. Seems like every time I pick this up, I pick up a different aroma and flavor than I got the first time. So now when I'm checking the nose here, I'm feeling some brown sugar notes that I didn't remember getting initially. And again, for the proof this is, it is remarkably easy to drink. But I don't find the texture of the mouth feel quite as silky as I do the J Riegers. In all honesty, it feels just. I mean, I hate to say this for a whiskey of this proof, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't have it doesn't feel quite as textured. I guess feels a little thinner, even though it is a higher proof. Good night, Irene. That's gorgeous. So I'm going to set that down. I'm going to pick up the J Riegers one last time. So which one is better? Somebody's bound to ask. And the honest truth is, I feel both are quality whiskey. So better is going to be up to you. That taste preferences. I don't feel that one is a higher quality than the other. And I was really looking if I could find noticeable flaws in either, which is something I don't typically do. But I find both to be quality whiskeys. Now, if we're talking about taste preferences and aroma preferences, I must say for my taste buds, I like the J Riegers. I like it a lot. And if I'm going into a store and I see both whiskeys at about the same price, I'm buying this one. And I'm really upset at myself for not buying two bottles when I had the money and the ability to. But I never had it before, so I just picked up the one. But honestly, I wish I'd have picked up two because it really is that good. Yeah, and honestly, I see. I wasn't even aware that they had a bourbon out. To be honest with you, because their Kansas City whiskey uses Oloroso sherry, so it's marketed as Kansas City whiskey, not a bourbon. But this one is their bourbon, and I didn't realize that at the time when I bought it. Oh but it's absolutely gorgeous. So there you go. I am Tom the Whiskey Whisperer, whiskey evangelist, prolific whiskey drinker, wisdom, and all around good guy. Cheers.